So, when the first 33 RPM vinyl records were released in June of 1948, they were released in one of two covers. You had the music stand design and you had the Grecian column design. The covers were generic covers that were used on many different releases. You have here several different Grecian column releases. Now, it's important to remember at the time, any photography was black and white. It was still new photography at the time, so if there was any art on, let's say, a movie poster or a Broadway show poster or a book cover, even advertising, it was mostly illustration. In the late 40s and early 50s, it was still the illustration era. So one of the reasons they only had two different designs for the first 133 records released was they didn't have time. Once the technology was invented, they wanted to get the records out there to the public. So Columbia Records got their head designer, Alex Steinwise, to design the envelope packaging with the flaps there, and also he designed the two generic covers. So into 1949, there were still records being released by Columbia that looked like this, but they started to change things up. This is another design. You have Everybody Polka, Benny Goodman, Xavier Cugat, Harry James, Same Songs, Various Release, and Les Brown, all with the same cover. The same block background design with the Columbia logo and the LP in the middle. Then you have the artist and the album title up in the top center there. Long, plain, micro groove, non-breakable record. Song titles on the left side, and then down in the left corner, the picture of the band, and there's the girl dancing and the drum player, the piano player. A lively picture that could be about any kind of music Columbia released at the time, basically represented in that picture there. Now here we have, this is another generic design that was released by Columbia in 1949. Different colors, of course, representing different releases, but the same design. These covers are pretty cool. They have the instruments along the side strip, the drums, the stand-up bass, saxophone, clarinet, keys, trumpet, and not a lot of different colors. You have the orange, the green, and the blue. These are some other Columbia Records covers. Generic, but a little different. They're starting to get a little more unique. These two have the same background. This one features a city, a New York scene, New York jazzy music there, and the Dixieland Express, Phil Zito and his New Orleans International City Dixielanders. That would likely be a characterization of Phil Zito and the guys. There's a nice little picture there in a generic cover. The Gene Krupa as well, great drummer, and so of course you have the drum kit in the corner to indicate the music inside of that release. And the last three from Columbia, generic covers with the same design. These ones here, the same idea as the previous ones, the backgrounds similar with some different colors, and then there's a picture representing the music, the sounds inside. Tino Rossi sings with orchestra directed by Rémi Legrand and Albert Lasserie. Looks like a Paris street there, French kind of village. Anniversary songs, The Flowers in the Bouquet, very fitting, and just a compilation. So it wasn't just Columbia Records either. Other companies started to release 33 RPM albums in 1949, 10-inch releases, like these ones from London Records, which used the same generic cover, the keyboards with the different colors. Now this Winifred Atwell cover is an envelope cover. We'll be talking about the envelope cover in the next episode of The Art of the Album Cover. These are a couple of other releases by London Records in 1949. Basically the same, little different design, but the same idea, but the white background there and then the dark background on this one. And then the back covers as well, very similar. And the back cover really wasn't included as part of the artwork in the early days. It was either used for promotion of the artist, or the back cover would include the catalog of the record companies. Now some covers included both, and it took quite some time for the back cover to be a part of the art, and the back cover will be featured on another episode of The Art of the Album Cover. These are some pretty cool releases from Capitol Records. They have the same design, sort of that fingers intertwining. Almost look like a couple of grand pianos from above. And the Lorindo Almeida, concert creations for guitar. They add the guitar in there to sort of give you an idea of the music inside. Longtime a member of Stan Kenton's orchestra, Laurindo Almeida. Great record. Capitol Records, some great early designers and pioneers in the art of the album cover. Now, another thing to keep in mind is budget. A big part of the evolution of the album cover is the budget. I mean, the more colors you use, the more it will cost to print mass quantities. And if you only have to print 1 or 2 colors or 1 or 2 designs using the same illustration, it's going to be a lot more cost effective. So this is an interesting similarity here. You have Frankie Laine and Songs He Made Famous, a 10-inch release on Mercury Records from 1949. It's actually a embossed sort of leathery type of finish on the record, and all of the design there is pretty cool. On the bottom row you have musical instruments, a violin, clarinets, some pages of music and harp and horns. Just a great design, and this was on a lot of Mercury Records. Not only 10-inch Mercury releases, but 12-inch Mercury Records releases. This right here is actually the first 12-inch, 33 RPM vinyl record released by Mercury Records. It came out in 1951. Alfred Newman and his Hollywood Symphony Orchestra, Popular Classics, and you can tell by the serial number, MG20000 is the first 12-inch released by Mercury Records. And of course, it has the same design as the 10-inch. Now, in addition to having the same covers and designs for a lot of releases, it also wasn't uncommon to see the same picture on more than one release. On the back of this Alfred Newman, first 12-inch ever, released by Mercury Records, you can see there's a picture of Alfred right there. And then here we have a 10-inch Alfred Newman release by Mercury Records, and it is in fact the same picture of Alfred Newman right there. We have this one here, Waltzing with Mantovani and Musical Moments. Same design, same picture, just different colors for the 2 releases. This one here, released in 1950, and this one here came out in 1951. They do have different back covers, and this one is an envelope cover that releases from the top. Here's a couple of other examples of the same picture. This is a rather iconic picture of Glenn Miller. Now, Glenn Miller died in 1944, plane crash above France during the war, a very tragic day, and this picture of Glenn Miller has been used on probably thousands of releases. This one here, you can see it's the black and white photograph, but airbrush details, and this one, it's close up and more airbrush, more looks like a painting than anything. A couple of releases from Vera Lynn in 1949 and then 1950 for Volume 1 and Volume 2, Sincerely Yours, Vera Lynn. There's a couple of Guy Lombardo records, Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians, and then Lombardo Land. And we have the exact same picture of Guy on the front. And one more example, Tony Martin and his grin. Check out Tony. And the floating head. That was something you would see quite often in the illustration era. When a photograph was included, a headshot, they would kind of have it floating with the background, just like that there. So once the 33 RPM was introduced, 10-inch records were the format for Popular Records for many years, but there were also, of course, 12-inch records being released of classical albums and also Broadway show tunes. They needed more running time, so they would be on, of course, 12-inch records. And this is the first 12-inch 33 RPM record released by Decca Records in 1949. It has the serial number Decca 8000, selections from the Theater Guild musical play Oklahoma. And the vinyl as well, pretty cool. You have the old Decca Records label, and this is the second Decca release on 12-inch for 33 RPM. Decca 8001. It's Ethel Merman starring in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Annie, Get Your Gun with music and lyrics by Irving Berlin. Again, it's 1949, and both of these covers feature a similar technique. They both have photographs that have been airbrushed with color. Oklahoma, you can see it's a picture of the whole cast, likely at the curtain call, and the background, the whole picture has been given a yellow tint. There's also the pink and the black up at the top to represent the sky. And then, interesting, several members of the cast have their shirts colored pink. And then for Annie, Get Your Gun, it's a black and white picture of Ethel Merman as Annie Oakley, and she's been colored in. Her dress has been colored yellow, her boots and her gun, her gloves and her hat, and then also her lips have been colored red. And although it's not the same exactly, but this picture of Ethel Merman, especially the headshot, reminded me of another album cover from a pretty popular record that was released about 30 years after this one, and that's this record right here by the Rolling Stone. You can see the coloring, although a little different, it's basically the same technique. You have the headshot in black and white, you color the hair yellow and the lips red. The main difference on the Rolling Stones cover, they've also colored the eyes red. But can you see it? Ethel Merman should have been on the cover of some girls. So, the generic album cover was a common thing to see in the early years, 1948, 49, 1950. They all look the same. And album covers basically were only being used as packaging in the beginning. So, as the 50s dawned, record sales were soaring and record companies could finally afford to put a little more money into art departments. And about 10 years after Alex Steinweiss and Columbia Records gave birth to the album cover, in 1950, it became the rebirth of the album cover. And that's in the next episode of The Art of the Album Cover.